Okay, so in this video I'm going to be working on problem 4 from the first test in spring 2020. So our goal here is to get the city or county, so Orange County also counts, that had the largest number of confirmed cases. And that would be in the country that's either the US or Canada, so you can assume that cities are written like this, like for example Chicago, Illinois. So our first goal here is to filter the data set so that it only has cities, it doesn't have states, because that's what you mostly have in the Corona data set is stuff like states, right? So for the US, of course, so for China you have lots of cities. So here for Australia you just have states. So for Canada, for example, you have Toronto, Ontario, so that would be a city. British Columbia, Ontario, those would be entire provinces. Okay. All right. So how do we filter? So what we need to do is we need to figure out whether every province.state entry there, if it contains a comma, we say that's a city or like a county. Otherwise, no. So we'll write this function contains substring, so it's going to be very similar to like contains love, the thing that we wrote for the analysis of the OkCupid dataset. So that's going to be a function of text and pattern, and I'm intentionally making it like text pattern and not pattern text. And the reason I'm doing it is because I want to pass various text to it with the same pattern. So with sapply, if I want to change the text all the time, that has to be the first argument, right? So, okay, so how do I do it? So I'll say grep. So in grep, pattern comes first, then text. So the way grep works, to remind you, is if I say something like ABC, AB, let's say ABC, so that is contained, so that's going to be 1. But if I do something like AZ, that is not contained, so that's going to be integer 0. So integer 0 is just a vector of length 0, so an empty vector. So if I try the length of this, that is going to be 0, but the length of, let's say, BC, that's going to be 1 because there is a match between BC and ABC. Okay, so I'll do length is greater than 0, and that's going to be true if the pattern is contained in the text, and it's going to be false if it's not contained in the text. Okay, so next up I want to figure out where the cities are. So how do I do that? So I can say something like is city, and then I'll do sapply, and I'll give the province.state, so it's going to be x is province.state, I believe it's capitalized, so I need to do Corona, of course, here, because this is not inside of summarize or mutate. So province.state, the function is going to be contain substring, and I'll provide a pattern that's going to be the same every time. It's just going to be comma space, because that's what it looks like when there is a city or county in there. Okay, so is city now is going to be a bunch of trues and falses. So here you also have like the names, but we can ignore them. This is just a vector of trues and falses that I can now use in order to get the subset of the data frame that's just cities, right? So I might do something like Corona, I can say filter, I can say so is city, so equals true is actually not necessary, I can just say, but I'll say is city equals true, and what I'll get is just the cities. So now let's combine this so that it's nicer than like computing is city outside and then doing like a city, this is city, this is not nice. So we'll do Corona. So we need to first filter by country. So I'll set country right now to be, for example, Canada. So now I'll say filter, and I'll say, so country capital is country lowercase. So now that's just Canada. Well, it didn't work because I did not define it first. So, and this is country, not county. Okay, so now I get just Canada, and you should do it as well like that, right? So you should check step by step that things are working rather than making something that you hope is going to work right away. So now we want to say, I want to check whether the entries are for cities or for provinces. So I'll say if city is equal to this sapply thing. So here I'm inside of this pipeline, so I mustn't say Corona. I should just say X is province state. If I had said Corona, I'd be in trouble because at this point I'm just processing the subset that's Canada, right? So if I had said Corona $province state, then that would be like all the province states from the entire Corona data set, and that's not good because I'm trying to add a column to the data set that's just Canada, so it just wouldn't work. But otherwise this is fine now that I removed it, so I can try it again and see that I have added this column of trues and falses. So here Ontario is not a city, British Columbia is not, but Toronto is. Okay. So now that I've done that, I can now say, okay, so which one corresponded to the largest number of confirmed cases. So you have the confirmed columns. So we want summarize because the answer. So we don't want to like add another column. We want to create a new data frame that's just the answer to the problem at hand. So we'll say summarize, so most confirmed city, and we'll say, so this is going to be province.state, and that's going to be at which max of confirmed, right? So which max of confirmed, that's the location of the maximum of confirmed. Now there's actually going to be several of those, but that doesn't matter. And now we're saying province state at the location of the max. So let's see how that's working out. So here you have most confirmed is city, British Columbia. So that's because I actually forgot to filter first. So I computed this, but I did not filter. So let me filter. So I say filter. And I'll say is city. I can just say is city because is city equals true is the same as is city, but I'll say is city equals true just to be kind of more clear. And now we see that the most confirmed city is Toronto, Ontario. Okay. So now let's first extract this Toronto, Ontario thing because this is a data frame, but we want it to be kind of a character string. So I'll just say A is like this, and I'll say city state. So the one that we're interested in is $, most confirmed city, like this. So, well, we need to run this first. So now that's extracted, and now we have city state is Toronto. So there is one more thing, which is we wanted to just extract Toronto, right? So we don't want the comma ON. So we have done something like this in precept 4, I believe, where we used str split. So str split, you use like this. So you say str split city state, and then you say what you're splitting by. So that would be the comma, and then you do 1, and that's going to give you a list. That's 1 Toronto and 1 Ontario. So you split by the comma, and you got a, not a list, sorry, so now you have a vector, the first element of which is Toronto, the second of which is Ontario. So now you can say at 1, and that is going to give you just Toronto. So if you had said at 2, that would have given you space Ontario. So if I didn't want the space, I could have also said like split by this, and that would give you just Ontario. But we are just interested in this, so this is city, and that's what we're going to compute. So now this is not a function yet, so all that we need to do is we need to just kind of, so this was just scratch work, as was this, so we just need to put it in a function, right? So we'll say most confirmed city like this. So we need to give it the data frame, we need to give it Corona, we need to give it country, and that's it. So we just enclose everything here in braces. We'll indent it so that it looks nicer. So we say A is like that, then we say city state is like that, then we say city is like that, and finally we need to return city. So I might as well just say this without explicitly saying city, because otherwise I would have just said like city is this, and then I would just say city again. So it doesn't really make sense. So I'll just do it like that. So we can now try it. So most confirmed city, say Corona, and we'll say Canada, and we'll get Toronto. If we say US, we'll get Chicago. Okay, so that is that.